Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Rayz Dayz, episode 152. This is a weekly diary podcast hosted by me, Ray Taylor. Every Saturday, I share updates on my journey as an artist, podcaster, business owner, and human being. I'm excited to share my experiences with you and hope that my journey can serve as a source of inspiration and positivity for you. This episode, I'm talking about how I was sick all week and what that means to somebody who is self-employed and what I had to do, right? No sick days in my life. I don't get sick pay, no sick days. I can't call in. I'm going to tell myself that I'm not doing any work. Work still has to get done, which also got way ahead on movie watching. So spoilers as far as what I did this week, a lot of, and I'm going to be talking about the podcast that I do on Sundays called Top 5 specifically. And as always, at the end of every episode, I will be sharing something that I'm thankful for. And obviously, I have some events coming up, so I'll be talking about that as well. Some live and local events. Let's get it started. As I said, sick this week. I actually started feeling sick Saturday of last week. So the day before I recorded, woke up not feeling good, kind of like congested, had a lot of like, you wake up and it was crazy. Like I've never felt, plenty of times I've woken up and it's like I have dry mouth. Like I've had dry mouth so bad that like my gums hurt, my tongue feels like it's made out of like sandpaper, right? But I was waking up this week like my throat felt like it was made of sandpaper. Like I was dry from like the chest up. It was painful and not good. And I think it was due to we've had a crazy storm come through Southern California. It started off being super windy here, which it gets super windy. I'm in the Coachella Valley. There's like this pass through the mountains where it gets a lot of wind. And so it gets really windy at times. Obviously, if you know anything about Palm Springs, you've seen the windmills that exist out in Palm Springs because of the amazing amounts of wind that we get. So anyway, the storm comes in, super windy for like 2 days. And I think that's what really got me sick. Whatever it kicked up in the air quality was probably absolutely garbage. So I woke up, a little sore throat Saturday. Woke up a little bit worse Sunday, but was able to get through recording. Very surprised. Usually, even on a Sunday, when I record all 7 episodes of the show, by the end, my voice is on the verge of going out. And I thought that last Sunday, my voice may not last through recording all 7 episodes, but thankfully it did. Somehow I got the recordings done. And started getting super stuffy that night, woke up Monday even worse, and, doing what I can to rest. Mondays are generally my day where I rest because Sundays I work from the moment I get up until usually like 2 a.m. in the morning, sometimes midnight, sometimes 2 a.m., depending on how long it takes me to edit and get everything uploaded for the show, for all 7 episodes. So usually because Sunday and just leading up to Sunday are my busiest days. So Monday, it's like I look forward to Monday being a lazy day. And so I took, I'm looking forward to that, even though I was feeling bad. Monday, resting, trying to rest, do what I can to rest. Drinking a lot of tea, which I drink tea anyway. I had some throat comfort tea, which is amazing for my sore throat. I got to tell you, if you have sore throat, aside from like lozenges and actual medicine, like the throat comfort tea with it completely eliminated my sore throat, which was amazing. And just the tea would help kind of loosen things up and all that. But the throat comfort tea from Yogi I found to be absolutely amazing. do like this nasal rinse where you put the saline, kind of like the neti pot, but it's, it's like a little squirt bottle. It's the poor man's neti pot, right? I got the refills for the neti pot. I had like a little squirt bottle with like art supplies, and I put some distilled water in there, put the little saline pack in there, shake it up, and then do what I can to rinse out my sinus cavities as much as possible, right? Trying to keep congestion. Like, my issue is when I get sick is that the congestion will lead to an ear infection, and then the ear infection will lead to bronchitis. So I am very much having to be very diligent in making sure that those things don't happen, because when they do happen, I'm sick for like months, right? Because I don't have health insurance, and being able to get medicine to just get over something is, so I have to allow my body to just repair itself in the much longer amount of time that it needs to, right? So thankfully was able to avoid that stuff, right? To avoid bronchitis. Tuesday, which is the day when I usually go grocery shopping, I went and got some medicine, so I was able to get some just nasal decongestant stuff, some like Dayquil type of stuff. And what else did I get? I got cough drops because I was out of cough drops. And just doing those things along with the nasal rinse, thankfully, it's like this felt different than every other time I've been sick. Like, usually, like, there's the same process of like, oh, this happens and then usually it gets worse and then blah blah blah. But I was able to avoid it, thankfully, and by the end of the week started feeling better. Like, yesterday, for the most part, I felt pretty normal, which was great. Yesterday being Saturday for me, so a week before the day this episode comes out, felt normal. Today, feeling a little stuffy still, and it's like I don't think I'm still over it necessarily, but way better than the beginning of the week. Which, thankfully, like, I'm not preparing for shows like I was. Like, thankfully, this happened when it did, right? I have an event coming up the day after this episode comes out, a live event. So I still have a week to do the minor preparations that I need to do. But the major preparations of all of those things to get prepared to do these live shows, to show my art, these pop-up shows and street fairs and things, the bulk of the preparation's done, and there's just minor adjustments here and there. So thankfully, I was able to just focus on watching movies and focus on getting ahead on the top 5 rankings that I do on Sundays, which requires me to watch a bunch of movies. So, I got came up with some ideas for episodes and got excited to watch movies, which I really love. Like, I would say my most favorite podcast to record, if you were to categorize what I do as producing 5 different podcasts, right? You have movie/TV reviews, which is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You have a episode recap podcast, which is every Tuesday. There's the news and current event type of opinion podcast that comes out on Thursday, Swipe Up. Then there's this podcast, Rayz Dayz, which is its own podcast. And then Sunday is Top 5. So if you're to, which they are all available in separate podcast feeds. So if you only want to subscribe to Top 5 or you only want to subscribe to Rayz Dayz, you can do that on any podcast app. Subscribe to each podcast individually, or you can subscribe to all of them bundled in a single feed. But out of those, my favorite by far to do is Top 5, right? Nothing gets me nearly as excited as, right, thinking of a new category of movies to rank and watch. Nothing gets me, like, sometimes I'll be excited to watch a movie to watch and review, but the act of having to review and what I'm going to talk about, way more thought and work goes into than just watching a bunch of movies and deciding what order I like them more or less in, and then kind of talking about why. and it's also like a great reason for me, excuse for me to watch movies that I haven't watched. Right? There's a bunch of blind spots in my movie watching history, and this is, just as doing movie reviews in general, a great excuse to watch movies, to watch classic movies that I've never watched, to complete franchises that I've never finished, like Rocky, or to force myself to watch a franchise I never wanted to watch, like the Twilight franchise. It allows me to watch movies that I have been putting off. And recently, while watching, like, I did the movies that are nominated. Tomorrow will be my top 5 Best Picture nominations for this year's Oscars 2023 Academy Awards, which I started doing last year, and it's a fun way to force myself to watch all the movies that were nominated, which maybe I've seen most of them, maybe I haven't. The only movie that I watched that I haven't watched that is nominated is the Avatar movie. That's out in theaters and won't be in streaming till summer. So when that comes out, I will probably do a James Cameron top 5. I will probably rewatch and review Avatar 1 while I also watch and review Avatar 2. And that Sunday, I will probably do a top 5 James Cameron and just force myself to rewatch all of the James Cameron movies, including the movies from him that I probably haven't seen, right? Like the first Terminator movie I've never seen. Most of the other ones I've seen, but, and to rewatch movies that I haven't seen in forever. So, and that gets me excited. And one of the topics, one of the top 5 episodes I came out with, because that kind of inspired me from doing this year's nominees, is to go and look up the movies that won Best Picture within a decade. And I went through and I started looking through the movies nominated, right, from the last 10 years, then the 90s, and like, ooh, went through the 80s. And there's a couple movies that I've seen, some movies that I've seen forever ago and don't really remember. And then there's a bunch of great movies that I've just never seen, right? I've never seen Gandhi. I've never seen The Last Emperor. I've never seen, I don't think I had ever seen Driving Miss Daisy, never seen Terms of Endearment, never seen Normal People, or Regular People, whatever that movie's called. So that's coming up in the pipeline, way down the road. Daniel Radcliffe decided to watch a bunch of his movies, non-Harry Potter, which he's in a lot of fun movies. But nothing gets me as excited to like sit down and watch a bunch of movies that are related, right? Whether it's director or actor. When I watched and ranked all the movies Flea is in, was a lot of fun, a weird cross section of movies, or to do movies that were, directed by even like Harmony Korine. That was pretty soul crushing type of movie experience to get through, or even to do something that I never even knew existed, like the Guinea Pig series of movies. There's nothing that I get excited, and it's technically the most amount of work, takes the most amount of time, because I'm watching anywhere from 5 to like 13 movies. But so the time spent is the biggest expenditure, but I don't have to like take notes. I'm not reviewing these movies, so it's the closest I get to watching movies casually these days. I don't have to take notes. I don't have to think about how I'm going to talk about this without spoilers, what I'm going to talk about in spoilers, how I feel like I need to talk about this movie, what interesting things can I say about this movie. I don't have to think about any of that stuff. I just sit down and just experience it, and it's like, how do I compare this movie to that movie? And then and I keep a running tally. I have a magnet board where I write down all the movies on different they're like whiteboard magnets, so I can dry erase marker, write down the topic, and then write down all the movies that are going to be watched. And I can rearrange them because they're on a magnet board, which makes it so much easier to reconsider the orders and things like that, and I can shuffle things around, make decisions, and change things. It makes it way easier than having to write it on a list, and I absolutely love it. Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about attention all Ray Taylor Show fans. We're excited to announce we've just released a line of exclusive merchandise featuring original artwork inspired by the show. Our high-quality shirts and biodegradable phone cases are a perfect way to show your support for the show and make a great gift for any fan. Plus, with each purchase, you'll be helping us continue to bring you great content. So don't wait. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com now and check out the full collection. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll show your support by grabbing some Ray Taylor Show merchandise today. And now, let's get back to the show. And doing the 80s, I was born in 1980, so these are movies that came out when I was too young to care about Academy Award movies, but super excited to watch a lot of movies that I wanted to watch, have been sitting in playlists for as long as there have been playlists to watch things, and I just haven't gotten around to or convinced myself to watch it. So to do these shows forces me to watch these movies, and I've discovered amazing movies that I never would have thought of, and just like blow my mind. And it's by far the most fun doing top 5. It's by far my favorite show that I produce out of everything. More fun than movie reviews. Even though I like movie reviews, it's very challenging. I would say movie reviews probably the most challenging thing I do. But it's by far the most fun. And another thing I brought up that I was thankful for in a past episode is the app Just Watch. That app makes that show so much more easy to program and figure out, right? Because sometimes I will have ideas. I'll have like multiple ideas of potential episodes, and I'll look and, like, for instance, I want to do at some point, I'm going to do the Planet of the Apes franchise, but I'm waiting for those movies to be available, the majority of those movies to be available on a streaming service that I have access to. And it seems like for a while they have been not available anywhere. So I don't know what's happening with that, but I don't know if there's rights, like somebody's trying to purchase the rights or whatever. But same thing happened with Rocky. Rocky was one of the potential franchises that I wanted to watch, and once I saw that it was available, all the movies were available on a streaming service, boom, did it, right? So Just Watch helps me see how possible it is to actually track down and actually watch all these movies. So I love that app, and it makes that show come together far easier, and just adds to my enjoyment of it, because it's a lot less work to track down all of these movies. And I love it when an idea works, when they are actually available to watch, right? It's like, oh, there are like 9 of the 10 are available. I only have to figure out how to track down one movie, or one movie, like for tomorrow's episode of the nominated Best Pictures for this year. Avatar is the only one that I can't track down unless I go to a movie theater, which I'm not going to do. I'm not going to go spend $20-$30 to go watch a movie that I'm not really excited to watch anyway. Wasn't like the biggest fan of the first one. Will watch it when it comes out on Disney Plus in the summer, but I can wait. So I'm not worried about that potentially being a movie that would have made my list, but guaranteed it wouldn't have been high on my list, because I'm really excited about the movies that are high on my list for tomorrow's episode. But I love that. So despite being sick, I've been able to get way ahead on that show, which during the preparations that I was doing the previous month before I got sick, before I did the show, I was doing the Black Mirror. And the reason why I did Black Mirror is because they're 1-hour episodes. So it's a lot easier to burn through those and rank versus watching 5 to 10 2-hour, 3-hour long movies. And now that I have a lot more time, I'm trying to get ahead of that so I can remain flexible with things, especially being sick. Despite not being able to, I can't call in sick. I can't just take the day off. Thankfully, the work I do is pretty easy. It's not very labor intensive. It is not labor intensive at all to sit down and record a show, aside from my voice, to paint, to edit videos and be on my laptop editing things and watching movies is it's conducive to being sick. And nothing I've loved more, even growing up, is watching movies when you're sick. So, despite not feeling good at all this week, it was I watched a lot of great movies. And it's sad sometimes watching the Twilight franchise, very painful to get through sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't go well. Sometimes I make bad decisions I regret. But it's done. I can accurately have an opinion about those movies now that I've actually seen them and know that the majority of them are absolutely garbage. And I can really judge somebody that there's one movie that's decent. I think The New Moon, is the only decent movie, but the rest of them are pretty god-awful. Which sometimes I don't mind that. Sometimes I like to torture myself, But it's always fun. It's always exciting. It's my favorite podcast to prepare for, despite it taking the most time. But, it's great. So, thankfully, it's easy. I also, this week, last night actually, was the Netflix live broadcast of Chris Rock's new special, right? He was doing it live. I think he was in Baltimore, live event on Netflix. First time they've done a live event. Apparently there was like a pre-show that was live that I tuned into, just to get my Netflix ready and open as I was preparing for today, and saw that they were doing like a live thing at the Comedy Store in LA before they threw it to Chris Rock in Baltimore, wherever he was recording it, and watched it. I used to be a huge Chris Rock fan. I used to be a bigger comedy fan in general, but Chris Rock specials, even like Dave Chappelle specials back in the day, some of the first comedians that I was a huge fan of, Cat Williams, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, like huge comedy fan back in the day, like holidays, like on 4th of July, I had a back in like 2007, 2008, 2006. I would love to watch comedy specials, make barbecue, get drunk, and just enjoy watching comedy. And I loved watching Chris Rock specials. And it's so sad to see how many, especially these comedians who are now like ultra wealthy, right? Like Dave Chappelle is, like Chris Rock is, like these are people that don't want for money anymore. And I think Chris Rock probably, there was one point very recently where I was considered Dave Chappelle to be the best comedian ever. And it's like so many of them just like take a dive. And the joke Chris Rock opens with, the premise he opens with, is a topic that every single stand-up comedian complains about on every single episode of their podcast for the last decade. And it is the reason why I stopped subscribing to podcasts, to the majority of comedians' podcasts. If a comedian complains about this topic, I unsubscribe because I am done. I have had over a decade of comedians complaining about this non-existent thing that has been adopted by the right wing as a reason to complain and act like they are being marginalized in some way. And Chris Rock opens his special talking about and complaining about cancel culture. It is absolutely ridiculous. It is so telling about how detached Chris Rock is from real life that he is also complaining about this thing called cancel culture. Meanwhile, there is no canceling. His buddy, who is said to have been canceled, Dave Chappelle, still selling out arenas, still has all of these contracts with Netflix, not canceled in the least. Joe Rogan complain about cancel culture, no problem at all. right? Being held accountable for the things that they say is what they consider to be cancel culture. And it is so exhausting to listen to comedians. And it is part of the trend in comedy I have noticed. Not all comedians, but there is definitely a trend in a lot of comedians that feel the need to just sell out to conservative audiences and that will ride this line and lean farther and farther right in a way that is just so sad, and it's just so tiring, it's so exhausting, and so hack. It is like the most fucked out premise for a comedian to complain about. And that is what he started his thing off. Thankfully, he moved on to it. Eventually, he went to talking about how white men are feeling like they are being given less opportunities or something. I forget how he worded it, which I thought that was funny, talking shit about the January 6th people. That stuff was fun. And then he got into talking about how spoiled his kids are. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't, it's not funny, right? Like, he had a couple funny jokes, but it's just like, it's just exhausting. And his style about telling jokes. His style about telling jokes is that he repeats things and settles into ways of thinking. His style is how he says things, and sometimes it's a nice way to have a cadence, but sometimes when he has his style and he just repeats how his style of repeating things is just almost like he's trying to remember what his bit was. Like, he's trying not to forget what's next. Especially being, takes some balls to perform his new special live. The majority of comedians film multiple nights of specials and then kind of edit the best parts from each one. So even though sometimes comedians will get the special in the first take, they will usually shoot at least 2, sometimes 4, sometimes even more versions of the same special in order so they can piece together a perfect thing. So it definitely takes a lot of balls for Chris Rock to do it live. So respect on that level, but it wasn't that funny. Apparently it ended after he talked about his kids being spoiled. He got into the whole Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith thing. So I might go watch the replay of that and just fast forward to whenever he starts talking about that, because that was the thing I think everybody was there for, and it's not surprising that that's what he closed with, but I was just didn't feel like getting to that point. I was just, it's not, there's so many comedians where it's just like they're, and he's doing jokes that, like, he has this, like, abortion joke where he's like, I'm for women killing babies, because that's what it is. It's killing babies. Like, I don't know how many comedians I've heard use that exact same way of describing abortion, and then to go into, I think they should be able to kill babies up until they're 4. I don't know how many comedians I've heard say that exact same or a variation of that exact same joke. Like, he is doing material that is so, like, just so fucked out. Like, just so hack and, like, nothing original. So maybe once he got to the Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, I'm sure it was great, but the rest of it's like, okay, man, it's just, not funny. And, like, I've heard you're not doing anything that I haven't heard fucking, like, TikTok comedians, far lower level comedians that don't have these big contracts with Netflix and HBO that are just putting up their clips from shows they're doing as they actually work the road. I've seen those jokes. So it's sad when you see somebody, an established comedian, not doing, it's not even that it's not even original. It's just like a premise that is so tired and has been so tired, aside from the fact that women lost their rights to get an abortion in multiple states. Aside from that piece of like current event, the topic of abortion in stand-up comedy is like so, like, there's so little interesting new things that a comedian could wring out of that stone, you know? So I don't know. It was, I don't know what I was expecting. I was hoping to not be disappointed, you know, but not that surprising considering, you know, the direction Dave Chappelle's gone, the direction so many comedians that I used to really like. And of course they work together. Of course he was definitely made a point to be more inclusive of trans people than Dave Chappelle has continued to not be in multiple specials. So in some ways he learned from Dave Chappelle not to be a bigot in that way. But there's stuff in there that's like, it's just, I don't know. It's just so tired. Just like nothing he said was like, oh, that's an original thought. Ooh, that's something I haven't heard at least 20 comics already do different versions of, saying the exact same thing. So a little bit disappointing. Not that surprising, but you know, eventually I'll go back because I want to hear what he says about Will Smith, because I think what Will Smith did was garbage. I think the fact that Will Smith then got the Best Actor award right after assaulting somebody doing their job on stage was just gross. The fact that he was made it such a performance to get up on the catwalk and walk his rich ass over to slap Chris Rock, who made a just as outdated joke, an outdated joke about G.I. Jane. Like if any kind of sign about how out of touch Chris Rock is the fact that he was making G.I. Jane references. And then the fact that Will Smith only did this performative thing after laughing and realizing that his wife wasn't laughing. So then he had to go defend her honor, because that's the kind of world we're living in, where men have to defend the honor of their fragile woman. So I don't know. I'll probably go back and check that out. But that's been my week. And as I want to do, it is so easy to talk shit, as I have been to Chris Rock, who is a multimillionaire and couldn't care less what I say. I'm sure the majority of comedians who like Chris Rock and who lean conservative and bring up all of the exact talking points as the other comedians who are trying to be like controversial by being conservative, as is the trend, following the footsteps of their leader, Joe Rogan. I'm sure they could care less about my opinions on that as well. But that's my thought as somebody that used to be a big fan of comedy for the last decade plus. And then during the pandemic, I saw how they all kind of became little Rogan sheep. And even Rogan used to be a huge fan of his. And seeing his lean into being conservative is just, it's, you know, it's a great way to turn me off to the whole art form. Thankfully, there's a handful of comedians that don't sell out to that bullshit, that aren't leaning right. And their podcasts are fun. They never have to complain about cancel culture, because they're not using racism as a means to some kind of shortcut to laughter. They're not using the exact same premises that all the other comedians are, that are just talking to conservatives that eat it up, that all the politicians use. Chris Rock even did my pronouns are joke, which is like, okay, Ted Cruz. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad. But anyway, let's take a quick break from this episode because I want to promote. Are you looking for a way to take your love of The Ray Taylor Show to the next level? Look no further than Inspire Disorder Plus. As a member, you'll get access to a whole host of amazing perks, including the full week of shows, ad-free in both audio and video versions, a live painting archive, early access to the many faces, members-only discounts and deals, a podcast back catalog with over 600 episodes. But that's not all. As a member, you'll get access to my personal blog as well as my creative writing. You'll also get the chance to ask me anything you want. With all of these benefits and more, Inspire Disorder Plus is a must-have for any fan of The Ray Taylor Show. So don't wait. Go sign up now. Head on over to inspiredisorder.com/plus and start enjoying all of the amazing perks of the membership. And now, let's get back to the show. Let's move on to something I'm thankful for. Let's be positive for one moment, and then we'll get out of here. Every episode, I want to talk about something I'm thankful for because it is so easy to talk about things I'm critical about. And surprisingly, this week, I am actually thankful for the weather that hit Southern California. I'm actually thankful for the storm that probably is the reason why I got sick, right? Despite the wind, didn't like the wind, don't get me wrong, but the cold weather that we got, like I'm in the desert, usually before long, in another month, it's probably going to start being 100 degrees plus, and then it's going to be that way until the end of the year, right? As it does every year in the desert. The summers suck. It is 100 degrees at midnight, and then during the day, it's closer to like 115, 125, almost 130, right? It's ridiculous. I hate it. It's you can't go outside. Not that I'm going outside anyway, but it just makes life horrible, constantly covered in sweat, constantly uncomfortable, constantly like even sleeping is hard. Like sleeping naked with no covers, covered in sweat, just is not the most comfortable way to sleep. I like bundling up. I like crawling into a nice warm bed when it's nice and cold and crisp. I like how the cold air wakes me up. That's why I loved living in Denver. I loved walking around Denver. There's nothing better than getting up in the morning, going on a nice long walk with my dog in the crisp cold air, seeing the beautiful nature that surrounds Denver. So I appreciated the cold weather because I know the hot and miserable weather is right around the corner. So to get another dose of cold weather, to get another excuse to turn on the electric blanket and crawl into a warm bed at the end of the night, I loved it, right? Any weather that I'm not sweating 24/7 is great, right? And I like waking up and drinking hot tea. Right? I enjoy hot tea. Once it's summertime, I make sun tea, right? Which allows me to make large jugs of tea just by putting them outside. And I can throw that in the refrigerator, and then I drink iced tea throughout the week. But I enjoy being able to make a cup of tea, pick and choose. Oh, I'm going to have some black tea. Oh, my throat's a little sore. I'm going to use some throat comfort tea. Oh, I'm going to have some hibiscus tea that tastes amazing. Oh, I got this ginger turmeric tea that's delicious. Put a little cream in there. Oh, it's like I'm drinking like a creamsicle. It's so good. So I love being able to wake up, drink some hot tea, right? We also got a lot of rain for here, which is nice. I always love the rain, the sound of the rain, the smell of the rain. The wind sucked, so the wind, not good, probably the reason I got sick, but everything else was great. So this week, I'm thankful for the storm. And, obviously it's horrible, the flooding that's been going on in California, the people stranded with power outages because of the snow. Obviously, it affected other people in a much more negative way than for me, but for me personally, as a selfish human being, as any good American should be, especially a straight white man in America, of course, selfishness should be go without saying. But for me personally, I loved the cold weather, and it felt like winter too, right? Just as things started to warm up, we got some more cold weather, and I loved it. So that's what I'm thankful for this week, the cold weather that we got. Some upcoming events. Sunday, March 12th, which is the day after this episode comes out, if you are in the Coachella Valley, I will be doing the Love Local event on Sunday, March 12th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Indian Wells in the corner of Fred Waring and Washington Street. It is in association with, it's right by the big tennis thing, the Indian Wells Tennis Garden. There's a giant church there. It's kind of in association with that church. So I'll be doing that event, and I will also be participating in another 111 night market, which will be the following Saturday, March 18th, from 4 p.m., so an hour earlier than last month, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. At the Palm Desert Mall, located in the parking lot near Buffalo Wild Wings. So those will be the two events that are coming up that I'll be participating in. And both events, I will have my newest paintings available to purchase, as well as a lot of the classic artwork that I have for sale, as I have over 2,000 original paintings. So go to inspireddisorder.com/events for all of the live and local upcoming events that I will be participating in. And as always, I am also thankful for the opportunity to connect with all of you through this podcast and for the chance to share my journey with you. Please join the conversation by leaving a comment or rating on your favorite podcast platform or over on YouTube if you're watching this. And thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week, next Saturday specifically, for an all-new episode of Rayz Dayz.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.